Please watch this video until the end. Every detail matters. Every whisper has a purpose, and the final moments change everything you think you know. Chapter 1. The Salt in the Road. They say the ocean keeps its secrets until it decides you've learned nothing, and then it feeds them back to you in bits and bones. Last July, the night the town of Harbor Ridge shot fireworks into a wind that pushed them back down, 4 of us drove the wrong road home. The old causeway had been closed for years, a battered ribbon cutting through the salt marsh like a scar no one healed. We weren't sober. We weren't careful. And the fog, God, the fog felt like wet linen over our faces. Kellen laughed too hard from the passenger seat. Rhea kept shouting that the sky smelled like pennies. Jonah, pressed against the back window, filmed the nothingness as if it could be proof we were young. I was at the wheel, knuckles pale and stupid. Then something moved, a shape in the brine-soaked darkness, thrown up by our headlights and swallowed again. I don't remember choosing to swerve. I only remember the sound. Not a thud, something hollower, like an empty bell, struck. We got out when we shouldn't have. We stood in our thin party clothes, our breathing already little storms in the gray. He lay where the broken guardrail's shadow fell, his dark, slicker askew, one hand palm up as if pleading with the night. There was no blood that I could see, only the salt water licking at his boots, and the glint of something round in his fist, brass, weathered, the clapper of a bell. Kellen said we should call someone. Rhea said his chest wasn't moving. Jonah whispered my name like I could answer. I took the brass clapper from his hand. I don't know why. Guilt has a way of reaching before the mind. We argued. We stared at the marsh and the collapsed boards of the old canning plant, at the tide creeping closer like it had all the time in the world. Then we did something that I still feel in my throat in the middle of the night. We dragged him to the culvert and eased him into the black water. The tide took him without a splash, like it had been waiting. I threw the clapper as far as I could into the reeds. Still, I heard a ring, thin and impossible. I swear I heard it. We made a circle of promises and lies on the road. I remember saying it would be okay, and hearing how it wasn't. Then we drove away, pretending the fireworks were thunder or the last part of a prayer, depending on who you asked. Chapter 2. The Tide's Memory. Harbor Ridge wore a brave face all winter. The fishing fleet iced over and thawed. The church suppers lined up like harvests. We carried the heavy thing between us, never speaking it aloud, like people moving furniture in the dark and trying not to break a toe. When graduation came, I pressed a cap onto my carefully normal hair and tucked the night into the corner of my heart where secrets go to mold. The fog retreated for summer like a promise. I slept with a fan on. I woke to Gulls, to the sound of the buoy bell out past the point, dull and steady whenever the tide threw its body against it. The first message was folded into my shoe locker at the pool, where I worked mornings. A strip of paper softened by damp fingers. I heard your tires last July. I stopped breathing. I looked around at the kids shrieking on the diving boards and the old men with blue-ringed eyes and told myself it was a prank. When I turned the paper over, a smear of dried salt left a white scar across my palm. The second message was quieter. Rhea found it on her bathroom mirror after a hot shower fogged the glass. A finger had written 3 words in the steam. You turned away. We met at the diner with the chipped red booths, our group of 4 again, but nothing like before. Jonah rubbed his thumb hard against a sugar packet until it split. Kellen kept staring out the window at the harbor, at the cracked statue of the patron saint of lost sailors. It's some idiot, he said. Someone from school. They heard something. People talk. No one knows, I said, pretending to sound sure. No one. Rhea pushed her hair back and let it fall again, building a small shield of herself in gestures. I didn't write on my mirror. I didn't put that note in your locker, Kellen said, as if we thought he did. Maybe it's nothing. Jonah swallowed hard. Maybe the wind. He sent me 3 videos that night of the causeway and the marsh, filmed from his bike, both hands on the handlebars so the camera swayed like drunk sight. In each one, he stopped and listened. And in each one you could hear the bell out past the point, steady and slow, a sound like an accusation repeated until it becomes a fact. Chapter 3, the bellman. They started to leave things. Maybe he started to leave things. I should say and it would let me sleep. One morning I found a tangle of drowned grass on my porch with a single brass screw threaded through it, greened with age. When I picked it up, my fingers came away smelling of coins. Rhea discovered a stitched piece of canvas in her mailbox, the corner of a slicker with a torn hem, her name written in marker on the inside, as if it had been hers all along. Kellen's car windshield had a circle traced on it in grit, like a mouth, like a bell. In the circle he had written a time, midnight. At midnight, we stood at the foot of the lighthouse on Gray Sister Point, the one they only light now for storms. The door is chained. The windows are silted with gull droppings and the past. We thought we'd see whoever was playing games. We thought we'd see a kid with a borrowed hook and a bad sense of humor. Instead, the fog came up like breath on a mirror again, and a shape appeared on the stairs where the chain should have made it impossible. A man in a raincoat the color of dying grass. It hung wrong on him, too big or too old, or both. His face was in the shadow of the hood, and behind him the shore bell began to toll. Not the buoy, not the bell in the water, the old bronze on the point that only rings when someone pulls the rope by hand. Once, twice, 3 times it sounded. It rattled the little bones in my ears. The man didn't speak. He lifted his hand and showed me what was in it. The clapper I had thrown. I recognized the notch in it, the scar of years, the way it had felt both heavier and lighter than anything righteous. You, I said, because sometimes a single syllable is exactly what your soul can carry. He turned and disappeared down the other side of the stairs into a curtain of mist that closed like a closing eye. Rhea reached for my arm and held on so tight it hurt, and somewhere out near the point, the buoy bell responded, as if answering an old rival who had finally come ashore. We didn't tell anyone. Who would we have told? That we had seen a man who shouldn't have a reason to hate us with a piece of proof in his hand and no desire to use a voice. We told ourselves it wasn't him, that him had no shape and no past and no hunger. That him was a haunting in the town's plumbing, and we were just catching it in the pipes of ourselves. We began to sleep badly. We began to take long, useless showers. We began to check the locks twice, thrice, and never feel them hold. Chapter 4, The Truth That Floats. I went back to the causeway in daylight when tourists were taking pictures of the gulls like they were gods with bad breath. The marsh felt less like a mouth and more like a lung then, expanding and contracting with the tide under a blue as fresh as laundry. I walked to the culvert and sat on the hot concrete and did not cry. It felt like I was sitting on the rim of a throat. There were flowers tucked into the metal grate. People leave flowers at the stupidest places. Highway mile markers, anonymous corners. I leaned closer. There was a laminated photo under the bouquet. A man with a quiet smile and a child on his shoulders. Both eyes squinted in joy. Someone's handwriting flowed across the bottom like a ribbon, taken by the water, July 4th. I know the face we left. I know it like you know your own. This wasn't it. I took the photo to Jonah. He stared at it as if it would confess. That's not him, he said. That's not the man. What if someone else died that night? I asked, what if he got out of the culvert? What if we didn't kill him? What if we killed someone else by leaving? Jonah looked at me for a long time. There was salt on his cheeks, though he hadn't been anywhere near the ocean when I arrived. "Then we killed anyway," he said, and his voice frayed on the last word like a rope that's been rubbing against something sharp for too long. That evening, Rhea did not come to our meeting spot behind the library. When we called her, there was only the soft sound of a line left open. If you hold your breath long enough, your heart becomes a drum in your ears, and you can pretend that's what you hear through a phone. We found her car 2 streets over from the pier, the driver's side door ajar, the map light smearing a little 6 circle. On her seat lay a broken keychain with a charm shaped like a bell. The metal smelt of river rather than sea, muddy and flat. Along the side of the car, someone had drawn a line with something chalky and pale, the way kids draw hopscotch squares. At the end of the line was a cross. The police said adults are allowed to disappear. It's the only sentence they can say that feels both true and useless. I went home and ran the shower until the mirror steamed over because I wanted the word to come back. It didn't. Instead, a new sentence bled through the fog, as if someone wrote from inside the glass. I never drowned. Sleep took me like a debt collector. I dreamed of bells heavy enough to pull a body down and light enough to float when the tide changed. I dreamed of voices that didn't sound like voices at all. When I woke, the clapper was laid on my pillow, wet, sea-cold, patient. Chapter 5. Gray Sister Point. Storms on our coast do not arrive. They grow a spine and walk in. I could taste electricity in the air before I saw it gather at the horizon like dark cattle. Kellen and I met at the lighthouse again because fear makes fools territorial. Jonah said he would be late. He never was late. We didn't speak. We had run out of names for our guilt. Instead, we listened to the first drops knock themselves to death on the rocks. I held the clapper because it felt like the only thing holding me. He came out of the fog quietly. The raincoat again, stitched and restitched. The hood down this time. His face had healed badly from some old violence or new. The eye on the left sat lower than the right, riding the ridge of a scar like a boat in a swell. His mouth was calm. He was younger than I expected and older at the same time. "I never drowned," he said, and I believed him. "You put me in, and the tide spat me out on the other side of the plant. People always think water wants to keep you. Sometimes it just wants to prove it can choose." "Who are you?" Kellen managed, his voice as thin as the rain. He ignored the question. He looked at me. It felt like being measured by a carpenter who already knows where the house will fail. "I crawled up wrong," he said, "and I saw him." He pointed behind us, past the lighthouse, to where the rocks plunge in a cliff, and with the next strike of lightning, I saw a man standing on the narrow path, one hand on the slick railing. Jonah! His hair plastered to his skull with rain. His face turned towards us and away at once. "It wasn't me who you're leaving killed," the man said. "He had a son. He went in after. The tide took him like a contract. I see him when I close my good eye. I see you when I close the bad. I am not the only one who knows. The tide knows. The bell knows. Your friend knows and chooses what you chose that day." I dropped the clapper. It hit the stone with a sound that wasn't sound at all. "Jonah," I called, and the storm took my voice like a tip. He stepped onto the lower stair. The rock gleamed like the back of something alive. The man, our bellman, the name I gave him because I couldn't place him anywhere else, moved between us and Jonah with a grace that comes from being broken and standing anyway. He did not touch us. He did not need to. "Confession doesn't buy back the dead," he said. "Nothing does. But debt moves. If you confess, maybe it settles. Maybe it stops ringing." He tilted his head, listening. The buoy answered from the black water. The old bell by the tower mute, as if ashamed. Kellen tried to pass him. The bellman put his hand out, not to strike, just to say no. and Kellen crumpled like a wave that forgets itself on the shore. He wasn't hurt. He was just small. I understood. Tell, the bellman said to me, not to the town, not to the police, to me as if I were a harbor and he was a boat finally done. I told the road and the tire slick and the way the brass felt in my palm and the way the sheriff would look at my mother when I didn't come home. I told the stupid laughter and the lying and the tide's dark breath. I told until I wasn't telling anymore. I was peeling something off my chest that had grown roots. Lightning made all of us beautiful and ugly in turn. When I finished, the storm took a step back, and the old bell gave one single, small ring without anyone touching the rope. It sounded shy. It sounded like a child. Jonah moved again, and this time he moved away from the edge. When he reached us, his eyes were washed clean of all the pretending. He put his forehead against mine for a long heartbeat and then turned to the bellman and whispered something I didn't hear. The bellman nodded. He left us then. He walked into the rain and down the other set of stairs we never use because they end where the cliff doesn't. For a moment, the fog lit silver around him. Then it swallowed him, and the bell in the water struck once, and once again, slower. Chapter 6, What the Bell Remembers. We told the town. I will not pretend bravery was our first language. We stumbled through it with awkward grammar and too many pauses. We told the sheriff, and he set his mouth in that way people do when they wish they could love the law as much as it asks. He asked us why we didn't come sooner. He asked us why we thought our fear would be less than anyone else's grief. He asked us things we had asked ourselves, being kinder and being crueler in turns. They looked for the man with the broken face and the raincoat. They didn't find him. They found, by chance, pieces of a slicker in the reeds, the torn hem with stitches I recognized. They found footprints that walked down to the water and didn't come back. They found the buoy bell tangled for a day by an eelgrass braid, so it rang off the proper rhythm and kept its own. It sounded like a lie that had decided to become a song. Rhea texted me 3 nights later, an apology written like a ghost apology. Late, small, missing the punctuation that makes anything feel real. She had gone home to her mother in Maine, too ashamed to say goodbye, too afraid to say she had seen him before we did. She had turned away too, like all of us, but now she turned back. Do we go to jail? She wrote, the way you ask a question of God when you don't expect it to be answered in your lifetime. I wrote, we might, we should. I wrote, you should come back. I wrote, he said confession doesn't buy back the dead, but maybe it settles the debt. Some debts are old, some are new. The ones you can pay are not the ones that wake you at 3 in the morning when the bell is quiet and the sea is a flat black sheet you could walk across and never reach the other side. I still hear it. The clapper sits on my desk now, a paperweight or a promise depending on my mood. On windless nights, the buoy should be silent, but I swear it speaks. A single note, careful, respectful. It never accuses anymore. It reminds. That's the difference. If you meet him, and you might, because storms walk and secrets breed, call him whatever you need to bear it. The bellman, the drowned, the man who didn't. Don't ask him for forgiveness. He doesn't have any to give. He only carries the sound from the water to the land and back again, like a courier, like a warning. And if you find yourself on a substandard road under fireworks pressed back by wind, remember the simplest rule in any town that grew itself around a harbor. Stop. Call. Stay. The tide is patient and precise and not sentimental at all. It will keep your secret only until it tires of you. If you've stayed with me to this point, thank you. I want you to know that telling is not the end. It is the beginning of a quiet that doesn't feel like an empty house. It's the quiet of a bell at rest, waiting for true weather before it speaks. I know what we did last summer. And I know what I am doing now. I am listening when the bell speaks, not for the accusation, but for the mercy in the pause between rings. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give a like to the video, leave a comment with your theories, and share the video with someone who loves a good scare.